There are moments in astrology that quietly pass through the sky, and then there are moments that arrive with so much force that they divide your life into everything that came before and everything that follows afterward. Today belongs to the second kind. And before you dismiss that as another dramatic prediction, I want you to stay with me for a moment, because the deeper I studied the alignments unfolding right now, the more I realized this is far more complex than a simple planetary movement. As I connected each piece of the astrological picture, I kept returning to the same realization. This is not ordinary energy. It feels like standing at the edge of a doorway that cannot be closed once you walk through it. Today, on June 28th, Mars officially moves into Gemini. Even by itself, that transition deserves attention because Mars governs courage, action, conflict, instinct, and the impulse that pushes us into motion. Yet this time, the story is very different. Mars is not stepping into a calm landscape. It enters Gemini, where Uranus is already present, holding the vibration of sudden awakenings, unexpected disruption, revolutionary insight, and life-changing surprises. When the force of Mars meets the unpredictable electricity of Uranus, the result is rarely subtle. It resembles a spark reaching something that has quietly been building pressure beneath the surface for far longer than anyone realized. What erupts is not merely external change. It often arrives as truth that refuses to remain hidden. It can appear through a conversation you never expected to have, information that suddenly reaches you, a realization that completely rearranges your understanding, or a discovery that permanently changes the direction of your choices. These are not the gentle reminders people often imagine when they think about spiritual guidance. These are defining moments that make returning to an older version of yourself impossible, because once you recognize what has been revealed, pretending not to know becomes its own burden. If that already sounds overwhelming, keep listening, because there's a very specific reason why 3 zodiac signs are positioned to experience this energy more intensely than the rest. And later, I will explain exactly why each of them stands directly in the path of this extraordinary shift. Before we reach that point, though, it is essential to understand what is actually unfolding in the sky, because reducing this period to one planetary transit would miss the larger picture entirely. During approximately the next 72 hours, multiple astrological events arrive almost on top of one another, creating a sequence that gains momentum with every passing hour. Once I laid each transit onto a timeline, my entire interpretation of this period changed, because I could suddenly see how every movement supports the next one. This is not one isolated event. It is a chain reaction. Imagine one wave reaching the shore before another immediately rises behind it, followed by another before the first has fully disappeared. That is the rhythm of this weekend. Even if Mars entering Gemini were the only astrological event taking place, it would already deserve serious attention. Yet the heavens continue building the intensity. Only hours before Mars changes signs, it forms a powerful sextile with Jupiter. At that exact moment, both planets occupy the 29th degree of their respective signs. In astrology, this degree is known as the anaretic degree, a point carrying extraordinary urgency, because it represents the final moment before a sign releases its energy. It often feels like accumulated experience, demanding expression before the chapter closes. There is tremendous psychological pressure at this degree, almost as though the universe places everything you have learned into your hands and quietly asks whether you are finally prepared to act on it. The feeling resembles standing at the edge of a cliff after spending months gathering courage. You already possess what you need, but hesitation can no longer protect you from transformation. Then Mars officially crosses into Gemini, and almost immediately the entire emotional atmosphere begins changing. The pace accelerates. The mental landscape becomes more active. Possibilities multiply. Yet before anyone has enough time to fully process that transition, another significant event arrives. Less than 24 hours later, Mercury stations retrograde in Cancer. This detail matters enormously because Mercury rules Gemini. In other words, the planetary ruler responsible for shaping how Mars expresses itself suddenly appears to pause, reverse direction, and redirect attention inward. Instead of allowing thoughts, conversations, and decisions to continue moving in a straight line, Mercury begins inviting reflection, review, memory, and reconsideration. It becomes impossible to separate forward movement from deeper understanding because both processes begin unfolding simultaneously. As if that sequence were not already powerful enough, a full moon in Capricorn arrives on June 29th, creating a tense alignment with Saturn and Neptune. Then, on June 30th, Jupiter enters Leo, introducing another dramatic shift into the collective atmosphere. All of these developments occur within roughly 72 hours. That extraordinary concentration of planetary activity is exactly why this period cannot be understood as a single event. Every alignment strengthens the next one until the entire sky feels like a carefully arranged sequence of awakenings. Still, among every piece of this astrological pattern, I believe Mars entering Gemini serves as the ignition point. It is the first movement that begins activating everything waiting behind it. The emotional environment you have been living inside may feel stable today, yet it is preparing to break apart in ways you may not anticipate. Understanding why this transition feels so immediate requires looking back at where Mars has been traveling during the past several weeks. Mars has been moving through Taurus, and whether you consciously noticed it or not, that influence may have shaped your daily experience more than you realized. Taurus asks for patience, endurance, persistence, and practical effort. Mars, a planet that naturally prefers momentum, often feels restrained in this environment. Progress can seem slower than expected. Every achievement demands greater effort. Daily responsibilities become heavier. Much of your attention may have revolved around financial security, stability, practical obligations, or simply trying to preserve what already exists. Emotionally, it can feel as though part of you desperately wants to accelerate, while another invisible force keeps applying the brakes. You recognize that change is necessary. You feel opportunities waiting somewhere ahead. Yet every attempt to move faster seems to encounter resistance. That underlying frustration has likely been building quietly beneath the surface, creating tension between your desire for movement and the circumstances surrounding you. That chapter reaches its conclusion today. As Mars steps into Gemini, the atmosphere changes almost instantly. The energy shifts away from Earth and into air. It moves away from the steady determination of a fixed sign and enters the flexibility of a mutable one. Suddenly, the emphasis is no longer on remaining rooted in place. Instead, attention turns toward movement, communication, ideas, conversations, discoveries, and rapidly changing information. The rhythm becomes lighter, faster, and far less predictable. Events that once seemed frozen may begin unfolding at surprising speed. Messages may arrive unexpectedly. Conversations may reveal truths that have been hidden for far too long. Insights can emerge almost without warning, leaving you wondering why clarity appeared so suddenly after weeks of uncertainty. That dramatic acceleration is not random. It is the natural consequence of this remarkable sequence of planetary movements. And understanding how this momentum continues building is the key to recognizing why the days immediately ahead may become some of the most unforgettable of this entire astrological period. This is exactly where the relationship between Mars and Uranus becomes impossible to ignore, because the real story is not simply that these two planets occupy the same sign. It is about timing. Uranus has already been established in Gemini, quietly reshaping the collective relationship with thought, communication, information, and perception for some time now. Its influence has not been loud or obvious every single day. Instead, it has been working beneath the surface, gradually changing the way people absorb knowledge, question old assumptions, and exchange ideas, without many even realizing the transformation was already underway. Think of it as invisible pressure building inside the foundations of reality while daily life continues as usual. Then Mars arrives. Mars does not wait patiently or observe from a distance. It acts. It accelerates. It activates whatever has been dormant, and that is precisely why this meeting carries such extraordinary significance. I see Mars as the spark that finally reaches material that has been waiting to ignite, while Uranus represents everything that has been silently storing energy beneath the visible surface. When those two forces come together inside Gemini, the sign connected with communication, learning, information, language, mental processing, and the exchange of ideas, the result is not simply more conversation. The result is revelation. It is the kind of information that enters your awareness with such force that it immediately changes the framework through which you interpret reality. That is the message I believe this alignment is preparing to deliver. It is not merely another update in your life. It is the moment when something hidden suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. And from that instant forward, the way you think about a person, a relationship, a goal, or even yourself begins to transform. Before we go further, though, I want to clarify exactly what I mean when I keep referring to a message, because it would be easy to misunderstand this symbolism if we interpret it too literally. Yes, it could absolutely arrive as a text message or direct communication from another person. That possibility certainly exists. Yet astrology often speaks through many different channels, and the message represented by this alignment is not limited to words appearing on a screen. It may emerge as an unexpected realization that suddenly rises into your consciousness without any warning at all. It could be a casual conversation that you happen to overhear, where one ordinary sentence unexpectedly unlocks an understanding you have been searching for without realizing it. It may arrive through a news story that completely alters the way you interpret an ongoing situation. Perhaps it comes through an email that changes your direction, an uncomfortable confrontation that forces honesty into the open, or something you read that suddenly connects pieces of a puzzle which had remained scattered in your mind for far too long. The form is less important than the effect. What matters is that once this information arrives, your perspective cannot easily return to its previous shape. The reason this particular revelation feels so powerful is rooted in the nature of Mars itself. Mars does not whisper. Mars does not soften uncomfortable truths to protect emotional comfort. Mars represents direct action, decisive movement, confrontation, and the willingness to face reality without unnecessary delay. Its energy introduces information in a way that demands a response. It does not ask whether you feel prepared. Instead, it places truth directly in front of you and leaves little room for avoidance. When that fearless quality merges with the unpredictable force of Uranus, the timing becomes almost impossible to anticipate. The realization often appears before your mind has time to prepare itself. It interrupts familiar routines. It arrives unexpectedly. It exposes what remained hidden. Very often, it reveals something you never imagined was approaching. That combination is exactly why this period feels so different from ordinary astrological movement. Yet there is another layer to this unfolding sequence that captured my attention more than almost anything else while studying these transits. On the very next day, Mercury, the ruler of communication and the ruling planet of Gemini, stations retrograde in Cancer. That single detail changes the emotional landscape dramatically. To me, it suggests that the arrival of information happens quickly, but fully understanding what that information truly means becomes a much longer process. Mercury retrograde naturally encourages reflection, review, reconsideration, and deeper examination rather than immediate certainty. Cancer adds another dimension, entirely because Cancer governs emotional memory, family, personal history, belonging, vulnerability, and the foundations of psychological security. That tells me the message arriving during this period is unlikely to remain a simple external event. Instead, it has the potential to reach directly into emotional territory that has existed within you for years. It may awaken memories you believed had already been resolved. It may expose repeating emotional patterns you had stopped noticing because they had become familiar. It may reconnect present circumstances with experiences from your past, allowing you to understand them through an entirely different lens. This is why I continue describing this alignment as something capable of changing everything. The transformation is not created solely because new information appears. It becomes life-changing because that new information completely reorganizes your understanding of what has already happened. Suddenly, experiences that once seemed confusing begin fitting together. Old conversations acquire entirely new meaning. Decisions you questioned for years begin making sense. Emotional wounds reveal lessons that were invisible before. The past itself appears different because your awareness has changed. That kind of awakening cannot easily be reversed. If you have already noticed an unusual restlessness building inside your mind during recent days, you may already be standing at the edge of this experience. Perhaps your thoughts have been moving faster than your daily life. Perhaps you have struggled to quiet your mind because ideas continue appearing one after another without pause. Maybe you have sensed an unusual anticipation without being able to explain exactly what you were waiting for. If any of that feels familiar, I believe you may already be experiencing the earliest signs of this energetic shift. What you have been sensing is not necessarily the full event itself. It may simply be the first vibration reaching you before the main wave fully arrives. Now, although I believe every zodiac sign will notice this remarkable transition in some way, not every birth chart receives the same level of intensity. 3 signs stand in especially powerful positions because of the specific houses activated by these planetary movements. When I describe them as structurally positioned, I mean that the architecture of their charts places these transits directly into areas of life that are impossible to overlook. For these individuals, the message is unlikely to remain something they merely observe from a distance. It is much more likely to enter the most personal dimensions of their lives, demanding awareness, growth, and action. Those 3 signs are Gemini, Aries, and Sagittarius. Each one experiences this sequence through a different part of the birth chart, which means the awakening takes a unique form for each of them. Let us begin with Gemini, because for those carrying strong Gemini placements, this moment represents something deeply personal. If your sun, moon, or rising sign is in Gemini, Mars enters your first house today. The first house represents your identity, physical presence, personal direction, confidence, and the way you experience yourself in the world. Because of that, this transit is not simply producing changes around your external circumstances. It reaches directly into your own sense of self. It asks who you are becoming, how you choose to move through life, and whether the version of yourself you have been carrying still reflects who you truly are. To fully appreciate why this shift matters so much, we also need to remember where Mars has spent the previous several weeks. Before entering Gemini, Mars traveled through Taurus, activating your 12th house. The 12th house is often associated with solitude, subconscious processing, inner healing, hidden struggles, private battles, and everything taking place behind the scenes before visible transformation finally emerges. If you are a Gemini, there is a strong possibility you have already been living through that symbolism. Perhaps your energy has felt unusually depleted without any obvious explanation. You may have withdrawn from others more than usual, not because you wanted isolation forever, but because something inside you required quiet space to process experiences that words could not easily describe. Maybe you have been carrying emotional weight privately while appearing perfectly capable on the outside. It could have seemed as though your efforts remained invisible, as if you were working tirelessly without receiving recognition, or as though an unseen force kept reducing your momentum whenever you attempted to move ahead. That quiet internal season has not been meaningless. It has been preparing the foundation for what begins now, and understanding why that preparation mattered becomes the next essential part of this unfolding story. For Gemini, the chapter that has quietly unfolded behind closed doors reaches its conclusion today, and the transition is anything but subtle. There is no slow easing into this next season. The shift happens with remarkable speed, almost as though a curtain that has been blocking the light is suddenly pulled away all at once. The moment Mars steps into your sign, the atmosphere surrounding you changes immediately. What recently felt heavy, uncertain, or emotionally draining begins giving way to renewed vitality, stronger confidence, and a level of personal clarity that may surprise even you. If you have been questioning yourself, doubting your direction, or feeling disconnected from your own motivation, you may notice those feelings beginning to dissolve far faster than expected. Yet the true significance of this transit extends well beyond simply feeling more energized. Because Uranus is already established in Gemini, Mars does not merely increase your momentum. Instead, it activates a profound internal awakening that has been quietly preparing beneath the surface. This is why I believe the message arriving for Gemini is deeply personal rather than external. It is not primarily about another person revealing something to you. It is about a truth emerging from within your own consciousness, with such unmistakable clarity that pretending not to see it is no longer possible. There may come a moment when you suddenly recognize that the compromises you accepted no longer represent your authentic values. You could realize that certain expectations you have continued fulfilling belong to an older version of yourself rather than the person you are becoming now. Perhaps you have spent months adapting your personality to make other people comfortable, stepping into roles that once felt necessary but now seem strangely unfamiliar. What changes during this transit is not only your awareness of those patterns, it is your willingness to release them. Surprisingly, that realization may not feel frightening. Instead, it may bring a powerful sense of relief, almost as though you have finally received permission to stop carrying an identity that no longer belongs to you. That emotional freedom naturally creates an equally powerful desire for visible change. You may feel inspired to transform your appearance, adjust the way you communicate, pursue different opportunities, or simply present yourself to the world with far greater honesty than before. These impulses should not automatically be dismissed as temporary excitement, because they may reflect the beginning of a genuine personal evolution. Even so, this remarkable wave of courage comes with an important reminder that deserves your full attention. While Mars is filling your first house with confidence, initiative, and bold self-expression, Mercury stations retrograde in your second house, the area associated with finances, material resources, personal value, and self-worth. Those two influences are asking you to balance enthusiasm with thoughtful planning. Mars encourages decisive movement, while Mercury reminds you that some practical matters require patience before permanent decisions are made. You may feel capable of accomplishing almost anything during this period, and in many ways that confidence serves an important purpose. However, avoid allowing that temporary feeling of invincibility to influence major financial choices, unnecessary risks, or irreversible commitments made purely in the excitement of the moment. The transformation unfolding within you deserves lasting support rather than impulsive reactions. Every meaningful revolution requires stable ground beneath it, and this one is no different. If you have already sensed an unusual inner restlessness building during recent days, as though something inside has been waiting for permission to emerge, you may already be experiencing the earliest expression of this transit. That growing anticipation, that electric feeling that something is preparing to change, is not something to ignore. It may simply be evidence that this new cycle has already begun touching your life before its full impact becomes visible. Now let us turn our attention to Aries, because this planetary movement creates an entirely different experience for you, one that unfolds with remarkable speed. Among all the zodiac signs, Aries often experiences changes in Mars more personally because Mars is your ruling planet. Wherever Mars travels, your own energy naturally follows. It shapes the direction of your motivation, influences your determination, and often reflects the area of life demanding your greatest attention. For that reason, every time Mars changes signs, you experience a noticeable shift in rhythm, and the transition taking place today carries particular significance. During the previous several weeks, Mars has been moving through your second house, emphasizing finances, stability, resources, and the practical foundations supporting your future. Much of your energy has likely been directed toward building security, strengthening your position, protecting what you have earned, or creating greater financial stability. Although those responsibilities have been necessary, they have also required a slower, more methodical pace than Aries naturally prefers. As a fire sign driven by momentum and decisive action, remaining focused on gradual progress may have felt frustrating at times. You may have sensed that your desire to move forward exceeded the pace your circumstances allowed. That changes today. As Mars enters your third house, the entire tempo of daily life begins accelerating. The third house governs communication, nearby environments, daily interactions, siblings, neighbors, local movement, contracts, short journeys, and the continuous exchange of information that shapes ordinary experience. With both Mars and Uranus energizing this part of your chart, I believe there is a strong possibility that a very real and highly specific piece of communication arrives during this period. It may appear through an unexpected email, an offer connected with a contract, an important discussion involving a sibling or neighbor, or a conversation that suddenly takes an entirely different direction than you anticipated. It could even involve local developments that directly influence the way you organize your daily responsibilities. Regardless of its exact form, the common thread remains the same. The information arrives quickly, carries genuine significance, and asks for an equally responsive decision. Fortunately, adapting to rapidly changing circumstances is one of Aries' greatest strengths. This transit simply redirects that natural competitiveness away from purely physical action and toward mental flexibility. Your thoughts may become noticeably sharper. Your responses may come faster than usual. Conversations may feel intellectually stimulating, and you could discover an increased ability to persuade others through clear, confident communication. Debates become more engaging. Strategic thinking becomes more natural. Your ability to process information rapidly may become one of your greatest advantages throughout this period. Yet alongside those strengths comes an equally important lesson. While Mars activates the third house, Mercury retrograde unfolds in your fourth house, the deeply personal area connected with home, family, emotional security, and your inner foundation. One influence encourages you to move outward into conversations, opportunities, and constant activity. The other quietly directs your attention inward toward emotional matters that may still require understanding or healing. As a result, the opportunity, conversation, or unexpected development arriving during this transit may also require adjustments within your home environment. It could reopen an unresolved family matter you believed had already been completed, or reveal emotional dynamics that deserve greater patience than you initially expect. The greatest challenge for Aries during this period is not acting boldly, because that comes naturally. The greater challenge lies in balancing exciting external momentum with genuine emotional awareness toward the people who matter most. There is also one final practical reminder that deserves careful attention. Gemini has long been associated with transportation, local travel, and movement from place to place. Mars naturally increases urgency, speed, and impulsive behavior. while Uranus introduces unpredictability and sudden developments. When those energies combine, ordinary situations can change much more quickly than expected. If you find yourself driving or traveling during this weekend, choose patience over haste. Give yourself additional time. Remain fully present and resist unnecessary risks, because moving carefully now allows you to experience the opportunities of this remarkable transit without creating avoidable complications. And understanding that balance prepares us for the next part of this unfolding story. Before we move any further, there is one practical reminder that deserves your full attention. It may sound simple, but under this particular combination of planetary influences, it carries far more weight than usual. If you are driving, traveling, or simply moving through busy roads during this period, choose patience over urgency. Mars naturally amplifies speed, impulsiveness, and immediate reactions, while Uranus introduces unexpected developments that can appear without warning. Together, they create an atmosphere where small moments can change quickly, so remaining alert is one of the wisest ways to work with this energy rather than against it. Now let us turn to Sagittarius, because among these three signs, this may be the most emotionally revealing experience of all. There is a profound reason for that. Gemini stands directly opposite Sagittarius on the zodiac wheel. They exist as mirror signs, reflecting qualities back and forth, often revealing truths that cannot be discovered alone. As Mars enters Gemini, it activates your seventh house, the area of the chart connected with committed partnerships, marriage, long-term alliances, business relationships, and every meaningful one-to-one connection that shapes your life. Because of that placement, the defining message arriving during this transit is unlikely to emerge from your own internal dialogue. Instead, it is much more likely to come through another person. During the previous several weeks, while Mars traveled through your sixth house, much of your attention was probably directed toward work responsibilities, daily obligations, physical health, routines, productivity, or occasional tension within your working environment. It has been a period centered on practical responsibilities rather than emotional excitement. Necessary, certainly, but also demanding, repetitive, and at times exhausting. Beginning today, however, that emphasis changes dramatically. The spotlight leaves your routines behind and shifts directly onto your relationships. Mars, entering the seventh house, rarely allows partnerships to remain unchanged. It increases emotional intensity, strengthens passion, encourages direct conversations, and sometimes introduces conflict where honesty has been delayed. Once Uranus joins that equation, another ingredient appears: surprise. The unexpected becomes part of the story. Someone close to you, whether a romantic partner, business associate, trusted collaborator, or even someone you consider an opponent, may suddenly reveal something through their words or actions that completely changes your understanding of the relationship itself. The revelation could take many forms. A partner may unexpectedly express a stronger need for independence. Someone may introduce an entirely new proposal, perhaps involving business rather than romance, or suggest restructuring the relationship in a way you never anticipated. It is equally possible that someone finally speaks a truth they have been carrying privately, and when those words finally emerge, they arrive with the unmistakable force of lightning. Whatever shape this communication takes, the relationship itself becomes the stage where the larger astrological story unfolds. For Sagittarius, a sign that treasures freedom, exploration, and personal independence above almost everything else, this transit presents a deeply meaningful question. Is genuine freedom incompatible with commitment, or can both exist together when built upon honesty and mutual respect? Can you preserve your independent spirit while still offering another person your complete presence? That is the deeper lesson beneath every conversation likely to unfold during this period. If an important relationship has become emotionally stagnant, intellectually disconnected or trapped inside predictable routines, this alignment is unlikely to allow those conditions to continue unnoticed. Something will demand movement. Either both people choose greater honesty, renewed curiosity, and authentic engagement, allowing the relationship to evolve into something stronger, or the realization finally arrives that its purpose has already been fulfilled. Although that possibility may feel emotionally heavy, I believe the clarity emerging from this process ultimately serves as a gift. Truth may create temporary discomfort, but it also creates the possibility for authentic growth, something uncertainty can never accomplish. Yet another important layer must also be considered. While Mars activates your 7th house, Mercury stations retrograde in your 8th house, the deeply transformative area governing emotional intimacy, shared finances, psychological depth, trust, vulnerability, debts, and resources connected with another person. Because of that placement, the relationship changes. Unfolding now cannot remain superficial. Intellectual explanations alone will not resolve what rises to the surface. This is one of those moments requiring emotional honesty instead of philosophical distance. Conversations about trust, financial responsibilities, shared commitments, emotional security, or long-standing psychological patterns may require much deeper attention than either person initially expects. Adding further intensity, the full moon in Capricorn arrives on the 29th, illuminating your 2nd house of personal resources, individual values, finances, and self-worth. Suddenly, an important balance must be found between what belongs to you personally and what is shared with someone else. Your priorities may differ from theirs. Your understanding of security may not perfectly match theirs. Those differences may initially create discomfort, yet they also provide an opportunity to establish healthier foundations. If you move through these conversations with complete honesty, avoiding neither vulnerability nor accountability, the outcome has the potential to become remarkably meaningful. Either an existing partnership evolves into something stronger, healthier, and capable of lasting far into the future, or you gain the freedom necessary to create a completely new chapter aligned more closely with who you have become. Looking beyond these 3 specific signs, it is important to remember that this remarkable transition influences everyone in some way. Mars entering Gemini changes the rhythm of the collective atmosphere itself. Information begins moving faster. Conversations become more immediate. News develops rapidly. Social media accelerates. Everyday interactions carry greater intensity than usual. And because Uranus remains part of this equation, predictability becomes increasingly difficult to rely upon. Stories that suddenly capture widespread attention, unexpected headlines, surprising personal revelations, or conversations that completely reshape public discussion may all emerge with little warning. The pace itself becomes part of the experience. Yet among everything unfolding during these extraordinary days, there is one piece of guidance I believe deserves greater attention than any other. Welcome the message, but resist the urge to react immediately. At first, that advice may seem to contradict the fiery urgency Mars naturally creates. Mars encourages action without hesitation. However, Mercury stations retrograde immediately afterward, reminding us that first impressions do not always reveal the complete picture. Information received during this period may initially arrive wrapped in emotional intensity, incomplete understanding, or perspective shaped by unresolved experiences from the past. Give yourself permission to observe before deciding. Allow understanding to deepen before committing yourself to irreversible choices. You will likely notice a powerful, nervous energy moving through your thoughts. Your mind may race. Ideas may appear continuously. Emotional electricity may search for an outlet. Instead of directing that intensity toward impulsive reactions, give it a healthier place to flow. Write your thoughts in a journal. Speak openly with someone whose wisdom you trust. Move your body through exercise or physical activity. Process what you are feeling before sending emotionally charged messages during the middle of the night, or making permanent decisions based entirely upon temporary emotional intensity. Shortly afterward, the full moon in Capricorn introduces another essential question. Whatever truth has emerged, whatever realization has transformed your perspective, whatever opportunity suddenly appears, can it actually exist within the realities of everyday life? Capricorn asks for structure, responsibility, discipline, and sustainability. Inspiration alone is not enough. Excitement alone is not enough. Every breakthrough must eventually prove that it can endure beyond the emotional intensity of the moment. Then, only 48 hours after Mars enters Gemini, and this remarkable sequence begins, Jupiter moves into Leo, introducing an entirely different quality of energy. Jupiter in Leo expands confidence, creativity, generosity, visibility, and courageous self-expression. Symbolically, it feels as though the universe gently says that once the outdated structures have fallen away, the space now exists for something greater to emerge. The important question becomes no longer what has ended, but what you are now prepared to create. Which version of yourself deserves to step into the spotlight that has been waiting all along? Looking at this entire sequence together, I truly believe this weekend represents a necessary turning point rather than random disruption. Whether the defining message arrives through an internal realization, an unexpected confession from someone important, or surprising information appearing without warning, its deeper purpose is to clear away what no longer supports your future. Sometimes old structures must break before stronger foundations can be built. Sometimes clarity arrives only after uncertainty finally reaches its limit. If you have already sensed unusual restlessness building inside yourself, if you have felt as though something significant has been approaching without being able to explain why, trust that awareness. You may already be feeling the first movement of this extraordinary transition. Before we close, I simply want to thank you for sharing this time with me and following this journey all the way to the end. Your presence here truly means more than you may realize. If these insights have resonated with you and you would like to continue exploring astrology together in future videos, I would sincerely appreciate your support through subscribing to the channel. Until next time, take good care of yourself, move thoughtfully through this powerful weekend, show yourself the same patience and compassion you offer others, and I look forward to sharing the next chapter of this remarkable astrological journey with you.